All right, let's talk a little sports. Deshaun Watson. Let's see if we can discuss this topic um, in detail um, and get try to use our words and communicate. My position, and I think a lot of people's sentiment, without offending anyone. So Deshaun Watson, the criminal side of his investigation is no longer. The prosecutor, they said they do not have enough evidence to charge him. They've been investigating him for about a year and a half. And if people don't know, 22 women have accused him of some form of sexual assault, whether it's indecent exposure, inappropriate touching, stuff like that. But only about half of the women were a part of the criminal investigation. The rest of them were part of just the civil part. And some of them have not been interviewed by the NFL. So years ago, when the NFL said we wouldn't like to take sexual assault, sexual harassment on and off the field seriously, and more seriously, they have a set of lawyers and private investigators to interview anyone who brings a complaint against a player, coach, any situation. And some of the accusers of Deshaun Watson have stated they have not been contacted by the league and the league's representatives. So that's their side. And then the NFL has decided to, obviously, the wait to see approach, wait to see what the criminal investigation was going to uncover. That part is over. The civil suits are still being processed right now. But I want to talk about, the Bill Cosby thing was so controversial when he was released from prison a few years ago. And the reason why it set a precedent. A lot of people don't understand that case was so pivotal to what is going on with Deshaun Watson's case. There's an MLB pitcher, Trevor Bauer, who went through the same situation. He was accused of sexual assault with a young lady. He said he slept with twice. She said the sex was consensual, but it was rougher than what she signed up for. Long story short, they met. She said she wanted rough sex with him. He said okay. They did all this over text message. And after the sex happened, she sued him, and civilly. So obviously she sues him for sexual assault. The police said we're going to investigate. So during the time of the investigation, he could not testify during the time because it was a criminal investigation at the same time. Same situation to Deshaun Watson. His civil case started a few days ago, and he had to plead the fifth for majority of the questions because there's a criminal investigation that's done at the same time. The reason why the Bill Cosby situation is such a precedence is because Bill Cosby was criminally investigated for sexual assault and or rape multiple times, and obviously some of them were set out of court. But this one specific instance, the prosecutor did not have enough evidence to charge him, so they did a handshake deal. Now, a handshake deal happens in the criminal justice system on a daily basis. This is kind of in our community, call it snitching. But the criminal justice say, hey, you want to go home, you go tell me what's going on. And they say, if you give me the information I need to implicate a crime occurred so I can get a specific outcome, then you can either get less time or no time, or we'll work out a deal. These are things that are not put on paper. It's not a contract. You're not recording these conversations. These are simply deals done in a closed room. And, you give me this and I'll give you that. This is essentially a barter. So the barter in Bill Cosby case was they weren't going to prosecute him for anything he did criminally that he was going to testify to civilly. So, civilly, he admitted to giving a woman drugs, but his defense was anybody who he gave drugs to, and obviously these drugs were putting women to sleep, and he's saying these were consensual acts. So he's saying I gave them drugs. They took these drugs willingly and openly, and they knew that they were taking these drugs. So his defense was, Anything happened after that, essentially they signed up for it, right? Horrible defense. I wouldn't say it. But his lawyers had a joker in their hand because they knew he would not be criminally charged with these things that he was admitting to on a civil stand. He lost a civil case. One of the accusers were paid in this instance. And then years later, he was charged criminally for the same testimony that he gave civilly. So the reason why this case was so big, so that's why his case was overturned. That's the basis of why his case was overturned, because he should have never been in jail according to the law. And I've listened to Midwin Charles. She used to have was a very prominent lawyer in New York City. She passed away last year. She interviewed his lawyer. She interviewed different people around that case. Listened to Judge Joe Brown and different lawyers who aren't black, who were just saying this is the facts of the case, and if he was to continue to stay in prison, that could mess up the criminal justice system. Because if you have a deal with the prosecutor to essentially get leniency, and they renege on that deal after you take the stand, after you give up, witnesses and or evidence, and in his case, testimony, it can damage the fabric of the justice system. So anyway, that case is the reason why Deshaun Watson has been silent for 2 years. He cannot defend himself, and the accusers cannot even investigate it either, because when you know someone is going to say, I plead the fifth or no comment, it's hard to really even play your side. Trevor Bauer's situation is very similar. He wouldn't even take the stand. He was supposed to take the stand, and his lawyer advised him not to, so he didn't even have to plead the fifth. And in his criminal investigation and civil investigation, he couldn't testify. He had text messages from the accuser, and that's what he used. So I think these situations are going to be very interesting going forward on the legal side. Obviously, we know sexual assault is wrong, sexual harassment wrong. I think on the side of the legal side, to me, if you're able to accuse anyone of sexual assault, sexual harassment, it should start with a criminal investigation. The reason why is because if you sue someone civilly and you lose, it doesn't mean they're going to even be investigated criminally. But if you if you have a criminal investigation and anything, even they plead down to from the original charge of a criminal investigation, you essentially automatically win a civil suit. For example, if my neighbor was to drive drunk and, kill somebody's dog in my neighborhood, and damage a whole bunch of property, and they sue for, obviously, repair my house and, pain and suffering for killing somebody's dog, and they were charged with drunk driving or disorderly conduct and stuff like that, and they were only essentially pleaded down to, let's say, speeding or reckless driving, something as a misdemeanor, even though they were charged with felonies, drunk driving or whatever the, original charge was, they would still be held liable civilly because they pled guilty to something that started from that case. It's crazy, but I think anytime you have something serious, sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, is very serious. It should always start with the criminal investigation. Now, obviously, we know certain aspects of the criminal justice. We don't really trust that process. So when you go to the judge, to the police, they might say, we're not going to investigate this specific person. This specific person has too many dealings with the police, or they know the judge, it's like that. So a lot of people are like, well, let me just sue this person because I told the police there's something happened to me last year, 6 months ago, last week, and they decided not to proceed with the investigation. So that's obviously a serious situation. That's obviously what goes on in some instances. But to me, overall, when you have issues like anything related to sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape, it should all start with the criminal investigation, because that would help out any civil litigation in the future. So that's the Deshaun Watson situation. I think he will be traded. I think he'll be able to get a fresh start. I don't know if he'll be able to get his career back. A lot of times, specifically for black men, and in any arena, doesn't matter, sports, business, music, whatever situation, when you have allegations, they kind of stick with you, even if they're you know found unfounded. It's just stuck with you because anytime they Google your name and say, "Oh, well, you had a sexual assault allegation, you had a sexual harassment allegation, you had a rape allegation," it's very, very difficult to unwind people's mind when even if you show evidence. But I wish the accusers well, because we won't know the whole details because most civil suits are settled out of court, essentially with gag orders on both sides. So we don't know the whole story. We just know civilly, this case will be able to proceed. These women will eventually get a day in court, not just civilly, but with the meetings of the NFL representatives, who investigate sexual assault, sexual harassment claims against NFL players and coaches. And Deshaun Watson will be able to defend himself civilly now more honestly because the criminal investigation is no more. So we'll see what happens. Y'all be safe.